Case study: a high-carbohydrate meal demonstrates the glucose control system. Number 1721, July 19, 2026. Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category: Glucose and Medication. Preface for readers: eat more protein and fresh vegetables. Eat less red meat and processed food. Reduce food portions if overweight. Eating a little less will not hurt you. Overeating for years will. Exercise every day. Walk at least 7,000 to 8,000 steps daily. Drink 85 to 100 ounces to 0.5 to 3.0 liters of water each day. Sleep 6 to 7 hours every night. Manage stress. Avoid emotionally draining people and unnecessary conflicts. Put your health first. Wealth, fame, and power mean little without health and life. Introduction: the engineering concepts discussed in this paper can be illustrated by one ordinary meal from my daily life. Yesterday's July 18, 2026 dinner consisted of a large carbohydrate-rich wrapped pancake with beef inside, a sweet deep-fried shrimp dish, and mixed vegetables, as expected. This combination represented a substantial glucose challenge to my pathophysiological system because of its high sugar and carbohydrate content. Following my hemorrhagic stroke on June 21, 2025, I resumed metformin 1,000 mg day as part of my post-stroke management and have now been taking I for approximately 13 months. Despite this glucose control medication, my continuous glucose monitor CGM still recorded a postprandial glucose ppg peak exceeding 200 mg/dl. This was not unique to this particular meal. Similar ppg excursions have consistently occurred whenever I consume meals high in carbohydrates and sugar. Whether I was taking metformin during the past 13 months or not during the preceding 16 years, although I have eaten such meals only once or twice per quarter over the past decade. From a conventional medical perspective, attention is often directed toward the pharmacological effect of the medication. However, from an engineering perspective, the dominant observation is different. The meal represented the system input, the CGM continuously measured the system output, the body itself served as the dynamic physiological system, while metformin functioned as only one component within that system rather than the primary controller. In this example, the magnitude of the dietary disturbance clearly dominated the short-term glucose response. The medication alone could not completely offset the large carbohydrate and sugar load. Immediately after observing the rapid glucose rise on my CGM, I began walking around my house to increase muscular glucose utilization and accelerate glucose disposal. This behavioral intervention represents an engineering actuator applied after the sensor detected an abnormal output. My CGM served as the sensor, providing immediate feedback. Walking served as another actuator, attempting to restore the physiological system toward its normal operating state. This sequence forms a complete closed-loop feedback control system in engineering. Disturbance: high carbohydrate, high sugar meal, sensor, continuous glucose monitor CGM, controller, real-time interpretation of the glucose signal. Actuator: immediate walking and physical activity of post-meal walking. Objective: return postprandial glucose ppg toward its baseline operating range. This simple real-world example illustrates a principle repeatedly observed throughout my long-term self-study of diabetes over 17 years. Lifestyle management determines the magnitude of the physiological input, while the body regulates the output through its intrinsic control mechanisms. Pharmacological therapy may assist this regulation, but it cannot completely overcome an excessively large dietary disturbance. Therefore, based on my personal observations of metabolic disorders, I consider lifestyle medicine to be the primary intervention, with medication serving a secondary role. More importantly, this example demonstrates why I consider engineering principles to be directly applicable to biomedical science. The objective is not merely to lower a single glucose measurement, rather, it is to continuously monitor the system, detect disturbances early, apply appropriate corrective actions, and maintain the entire pathophysiological system within a stable and safe operating range. This systems-oriented approach has become the central philosophy underlying my long-term personal health management after surviving 5 cardiac episodes, near kidney failure, severe neuropathy, diabetic retinopathy, and, most recently, a hemorrhagic stroke. Another key observation in my personal pathophysiological data is that my acute post-meal glucose ppg spikes frequently reaching or exceeding 200 mg/dl have remained virtually unchanged. regardless of whether I was medicated for 16 years or taking 1,000 milligrams of metformin daily over the past 13 post-stroke months. Because elevated postprandial spikes after 3 daily meals inherently drive up overall glycemic averages, my estimated average glucose EEG reflects this same lack of pharmacological response. Consequently, my personal data does not support the efficacy of diabetes medications, including metformin, in controlling these spikes or lowering my average glucose. This aligns with my earlier experience from 1990 to 2009. When taking up to for maximum dosage diabetes medications without making lifestyle adjustments failed to halt the year-over-year progression of my type 2 diabetes. Interpretation of 8-year glucose data, 2018-2021 baseline, maintained a glucose control between 11 and 136 with an average 123 mg DL through lifestyle management alone, without relying on any diabetes medications. 2020 to 2025 optimization achieved a remarkably stable, optimized downward trajectory in average glucose between 99 and 110 with an average 105 mg DL, bottoming out and remaining steady at approximately 105 mg DL from 2022 through mid-2025 of my stroke event. Post-stroke shift 2026, following the stroke. The pathophysiological operating state shift modestly upward by approximately 8%, which might have resulted from neuroplasticity during recovery. Nevertheless, the average glucose level of 113.5 mg DL remained well within a safely controlled range. The big picture, my central conclusion is supported entirely by my own longitudinal data, N=1, requiring no reliance on generalized clinical trials. The data demonstrate that my glucose baseline was progressively lowered and stabilized through long-term lifestyle management. Even after a major physiological stressor, a hemorrhagic stroke, has shifted my baseline upward by approximately 8%. My body's self-regulatory mechanisms maintain my post-stroke glucose within a safe, well-controlled range. Although I took metformin 1,000 mg per day during this post-stroke period of 13 months, the overarching long-term trajectory remained primarily driven by sustained physiological regulation and through lifestyle management. Epilogue: throughout my research, I have strived to avoid both blind criticism and blind praise. I simply report what I have personally observed through my own lived experience and longitudinal N=1 data. When my observations support the strengths of the existing healthcare system, I acknowledge them honestly. When they reveal its limitations, I report them with equal transparency. I do not speak for or against any profession, organization, or industry. My objective is strictly to present my personal observations as truthfully as I can. My conclusions are built upon evidence collected from my own life, rather than ideology or preconceived opinions. To me, truth and honesty are the foundational cornerstones of scientific inquiry. I know what I know, I acknowledge what I do not know, and I report what I observe as objectively as possible. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to T. He author, Gerald C. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share the summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.